the Mad Men podcast series, a new series of podcasts where we hope to provide some interesting conversations with people, find a little humour, and ultimately provide a little hope in this changing and challenging world we find ourselves in. My name is Jonathan Fogarty. It's a privilege to be here with you, and who better to join me than the incomparable Mr. Simon Reeves. Simon, hello, sir.
Jono, great to see you again, mate. And I am so excited that we are talking about the upcoming live sport. We never thought 2 months ago this day was going to come, but we are pretty damn happy, as are these two blokes below us.
Well, who better? We've got two of the ultimate nice guys of the NRL across any era. The first one, an NRL, New South Wales and Kangaroo veteran over many years. The second one, a veteran of one State of Origin game for Queensland, 77 games for the Storm. A big welcome to the one and only Brett Kimmorley, Christian Welch. G'day, boys.
Yeah,
thanks for having us, boys.
The current player.
You missed the word legend there, Jono, as well, by the way. I thought I'd written that in about Brett.
Yes.
We'll put it in later. Hey,
Yeah.
Christian, start with you. I mean, you've been going through this pandemic-related training challenge. You've been away from the group. Just take us a little bit through how you've approached that, the challenge that's been to get ready for this upcoming start.
Yeah, it's been a pretty unique circumstances. I'm coming back from an ACL operation, so I was lucky to play one game in Reggie's before the pandemic shut everything down, and then a lot of the players kind of went back to their homes. Felice Kafusi went to Bundaberg, Munster, Rockhampton. A few boys went to New Zealand and had to train in isolation and had to try and make do with what resources they could get, because obviously gyms and stuff like that were shut down. So it was a bit challenging, but got through that, and then had to start our pre-season again in Albury, New South Wales, just with the way Victoria were locked down at the time, and then we've been at Amy Park for the last week or so, adjusting to the new COVID protocols and whatnot. So yeah, we're really excited, and we're only about a week off now from taking on the Raiders next week at home as well, which has been brilliant.
Christian, I hear that the people in Albury, the motel where you were staying, they looked after you really well. Maybe not so much the council, but the motel folks were great.
Yeah, they were really, really awesome. We travel a lot. Obviously, the Melbourne Storm, every second game we're travelling away, hotels, and they just went above and beyond. And the people there at Quality Resort Siesta, they're amazing.
Got the plug
the
in.
Local, yeah, hey, go visit them, and even the local Aussie Rules Club, brilliant, letting us come there, making us feel really welcome. So it was a shame we couldn't really engage the community much, but hopefully we'll be back there for a trial game or a game soon, and repay the faith of the community, because they were really outstanding, apart from a couple of councillors who didn't really like having us there.
Brett, to you, I can't imagine. I mean, footy's post-retirement still a big part of your life. How has this period been for you and the family? I mean, what have you been doing to sort of keep yourself entertained and amused?
Yeah, certainly plenty of training. I suppose, as Christian said, that you got more free time in a way. You're not able to interact with society or anything. But yeah, most of my life now is involved still in rugby league, which is lucky. I feel extremely lucky and to be calling a job going to a game of football and commentating or commenting. So it's very, very good. Homeschooling. Three of my daughters still go to school. So year 11, year 8 and year 4. I had one finish HSC last year. So 4 daughters to certainly manage, keep you busy. Training. Currently building a new house. Not me building. I can't. But yeah, so it's been nice to sort of watch that. Demolition started in January, and then watch that starting to go up, and that'll be a new home, I suppose, and something we're looking forward to.
Noddy, you need an award, mate, looking after 4 daughters under one roof under lockdown conditions.
Yeah, you're right, Simon. The first 2 weeks, my 8 and 13-year-old were trying to kill each other. Was the biggest battle they were having about who could get on the switch quick enough. We had to get a bit of space from them. So my older 2 would take one of the girls for a walk, and then we would take the other one for a walk. And after about a week or 2, we sort of handled it. So it's been all right, actually. It's been funny. You get more time you cook dinner. You socialise a lot more with them. You talk to them a lot more. You feel like you're not in a rush because you're not going from job to job and school pick up and drop off continuously. So as bad as it's been with no work and uncertainty of future, it's been quality time at home.
Mm. And Christian, for you came back to your sort of family home in Brisbane for a while. Is that where you sort of based yourself?
Yeah, it was actually the longest time I'd been home with my parents since I left when I was 18. So that was 7 years ago. So yeah, as Brett was saying there, it was really, really nice just to clear out all that other social, going out, catching up with all the different people and kind of your core people who mean so much to you in your life, to catch up with them and spend a good chunk of time, because your footy, I'm obviously down in Melbourne. It was really nice to be back with mum and dad.
Did you have to make your bed? Did your mum put her foot down? What was the deal?
No, I was pretty good. I was actually I was training mum, so I got some training gear from East Tigers there, Q Cup. So I was inflicting a bit of pain on her with little PT sessions every day. So that was good.
Christian, you are part of a pretty remarkable organisation down in Melbourne under Craig Bellamy. Can you tell us what he's like as a coach and as an individual, and your relationship with him?
Yeah, I think Craig's obviously such a big reason why the team's been so successful over a long period of time, but also, the guys like Brett who started our club and that they were really at the forefront, moving into Victoria and Melbourne, without the great facilities that we currently have, no built-up fans or membership base. So they had it really tough, and I think they really built our culture of, if they did stuff up those boys setting up the club early on, it wouldn't be a club here today. The Victorians and the Melbourne people wouldn't, I suppose, buy into what we're about. And then obviously we've had some great leaders, and Craig and Cameron, Cooper, Billy, really carry on that tradition and the culture that they've built. Craig, it's funny, he plays this whole blue collar card to the media, and this boy from the son of a cement worker from Portland, but he lives in probably the highest salary per person in Middle Park in Melbourne there, and has about 12 properties. So he's filled a lot of you guys, and it annoys me, but I think that's just the ethos he lives by. He's worked hard for everything in his life. As a player, he tells us he wasn't that talented, and he had to really get everything out of his body, and I think that reflects in our system at the Storm. He's all about working hard, being honest, being open, and he's really taught me so many, not only football lessons, but how to be a good person and a good man growing up. I've been at the club since I was 18. I've been there 7 years now, and I think it's really shaped me as a person just as much as a footballer.
Simon, Jonathan, the other thing in rugby league world, if you talk about what the Melbourne Storm do, in clubland, they are known to be the hardest training club out there. You can talk about the culture, and their culture is obviously different to the culture that we had 98, 99, 2000. I was at Melbourne. Different people, different staff, still that work hard ethic. The culture of the Melbourne Storm, they train harder and longer. And Christian, obviously you guys probably put that upon yourselves about training. The work ethic that I suppose that you guys have had to buy, the camps that you go on, they're pretty ruthless, aren't they?
Yeah, the camps are pretty full on, and just the whole, I suppose, approach is, building resilience in your body and mentally over pre-season. Craig's a really big advocate for a really tough pre-season, and I suppose instilling the on-field, efforts that he wants from his players. So every session under fatigue, he'll have actionable things like pressuring a kick up, putting pressure on a half, wingers and fullbacks working hard to catch the ball on the full. All these little things under duress, recorded. The coaches work so many long hours recording that, chopping that, and I suppose growing that attitude towards their football that is, selfless in those actions, and repeating that for 3.5 months in pre-season. I think it really sets the team up well for success come round one, when everyone's working hard, and it's all about doing your role for the team, honouring your role, and doing that. And so if you do your role in your team, like for mine, I'm not expected to score tries like Sully and Josh Adokar. I've got a pretty simple job, but it's an important job. And I think that's the best thing about our club, is things that are valued inside our four walls and inside the team meeting rooms are a bit different from I suppose, the broadcasters and some commentators. And I think the best thing that Belzer does is he makes that important to the squad and the team. It's not just about, how many running meters or how many tries you're on. It's about the small, selfless efforts that can really help change a game, and they're really valued, so the players buy into those.
Brett, you talked about your 3 years there, that consistency of the head coach and the consistency of values. Is that a big part of why they've had the success across the generations? What was your experience?
My experience on the club is it's certainly been the best club I was a part of. I'd spent 6 clubs playing at and a few clubs working at since retiring. But Chris Anderson was obviously our coach for the Melbourne Storm for the first 3 years there, or 4 years Chris was there. But he basically loved the fact that he was getting a whole new franchise. So there was no players that were already down there. There's no coach comes into a roster that's already created. It takes him 2 or 3 years to change a roster to get the sort of players he wants. So it was last year when we had a 20-year reunion last year down there for the Storm from that 99 premiership. And that was the one thing I got out of what Chris said, was that to build a franchise without any players was what lured him to Melbourne in a way, because he got to create every player that he wanted and select them. So you had the best, a coach from the Canterbury club who'd won a premiership, I think, in 95. They were the best family club in the ARL, it was at the time. So Chris brought that values from the Dogs family club, and we had then Glenn Lazarus was our captain, so he was the Broncos former player. He'd won 2 premierships at other clubs, and I think he'd become the first player in history to win 3 premierships at 3 different clubs. John Rebo and Chris Johns. So we had the Broncos, who were the newest franchise in a way, I suppose. They come into competition in '88. Successful immediately, always at the top. So we brought, I think, the success of the Broncos with the family values of Canterbury, and then threw that all into Melbourne. And we had 25 full-time players in that era. That was the clubs were a bit smaller, and probably 10 staff members. So 1 head coach, 2 assistant coaches, a trainer and a physio. So we were all sort of thrown into Melbourne in any stage from sort of November 1 till I think I arrived in Melbourne sort of middle of January in 98, and knew no one. So we'd become best mates. We trained really hard. Every time a sporting event would come to Melbourne, we'd all attend it. They had the social club, which was the first time ever, you'd have a big presentation after the games, at the old Olympic Park site with members. We'd go out for dinner, bits and pieces. So it was a really caring club, very small community, more in a way that no one knew anyone outside of the 25 or 24 teammates and your staff. So we become extremely close. And then I think having success, I think we got beaten the semi-finals in 98, but just immediately starting well, having success out of the spotlight, I suppose, and all the dramas, what goes on in Sydney in some regards. And we're all kids too, so we were just all starting our careers and enjoying the ride. So it was a very, very well put together club, and I think we had, as I said, we had success straight away as well, which helped.
Christian, coming back to the present day, it's always going to be hard wrangling hundreds of young men, especially when structure and routine sort of goes out the door as it did towards the end of March after just 2 rounds. The buy-in from the players, apart from a couple of lumps and bumps along the way, seems to have been really good. And I think it is just amazing that we are talking about live sport and this competition kicking off again so quickly when it seemed all was lost back at the end of March.
Yeah, it is a bit onerous, some of these restrictions on the players, but the boys have been really great, really committed to it, and I suppose they understand the responsibility of the NRL and players in that. And I think a point that doesn't really get brought up too much is the flow-on effects of the NRL starting up and the broadcast monies coming into the game. And, we're set up a bit differently from, American sport where players, take up to about 50% of the salary cap. I think we're about 29. So a lot of that money goes elsewhere in our game. It provides really much needed stuff in rural areas. It's cheap to play rugby league for juniors, for kids. We can put development officers into schools and communities and really focus on, healthy living, healthy, mental health. And I think people fail to realise, the game of NRL, how far that money goes towards, I suppose, grassroots in our communities. So And obviously players have compensated very well from that. But I think there's a lot of people connected to the game, which it's going to be good once we start up next weekend. And Peter V'landys has hopefully got that broadcast deal, and we're back up and running.
I'd be keen to know, Christian, you've performed the role of the players delegate through this process. Have you enjoyed that role? And tell us a little bit about the challenges you've had to face.
Yeah, so the RBA, they've been really great. Clint Newton's our new kind of president. He's taken over. And I suppose every day we had a big Zoom call through 16 clubs. So there's be about 40, 45 guys on the call, 2 to 3 reps from each club, and just working through the process. And they did a fantastic job. And I suppose the NRL were really great as well. Peter V'landys came on, and I was really impressed by Peter. I hadn't had much to do with him, but he's a man of his word, and he came on and gave us some assurances that really came through and were important to the players, and made those things happen. And as I was saying earlier, when he first announced that May 28th date, I was thinking this guy's a bit off his head, but he's done a fantastic job in bringing everyone together, getting the game, working towards that one date. And it's really exciting, to be honest, and especially for the first couple of weeks where there is no live sport on. We've got the jump on AFL and a few other codes and American sports. So it's a good opportunity to showcase our game. So why not reduce our referees, and let's just see what kind of quality we throw up. It's a bit confusing, but that's very rugby league, isn't it?
That's good. Great answer. Nod, we've touched on resilience already, and you and I were working together when you faced your most trying times of your life, just over 3 years ago now, since you lost Shani, and the girls, of course, lost their mum as well. Tell us about what life has been like since then, rebuilding your lives with the girls, and how you look back on that now, and how you like to carry on Shani's legacy.
Yeah, you're right, Simon. Obviously, everything that I've sort of learnt from my whole life has sort of been lessons like that were all, for me, rugby league lessons. I had some huge setbacks in my career. Clubs didn't want me. That you train hard to prove them wrong. Obviously threw a pass in an Origin game that made you set back. And my career went through the good, the great, and the bad. And then that's sort of, in some ways, it made me resilient as a player, and always know that there was always going to be some good times around the corner. So obviously, as you said, the biggest setback for me was losing my partner a few years ago, the mother of the 4 children I have. And what happened was, I suppose, it became pretty instant as well. Life changed very quickly there. That you think everything's okay, and you're at work, and I was sort of off on the coaching dream, trying to chase my dream, and then life gets certainly stopped and put on hold, and you then have to adapt to being a single parent. The girls, my older 2 girls, again showed some amazing strength and resilience. So they knew everything that was going on the whole time. They come to a few of the appointments with us. They wanted to be a part of hearing what the doctors had said, even if it was going to be the bad news, and it was most of the time the horrible news. So they were amazing with their resilience and wanting to know everything. My little 2, I think, were a bit too young at the time to understand it, especially the youngest one. So, but I don't know, it got through from not wanting to be at home when they were at school because you didn't want to be at home on your own, to then being okay to be at home, to then trying to follow the same rules and principles. I was never the discipline. I'm probably still not the disciplined guy, but I was never the bad parent or the disciplined parent. I was the drop off, the pick up, the can we go get a slushy after school, and the fun guy. So then I obviously, then you got to be a lot firmer and stricter in your rules. You got to communicate more. Some days, you make mistakes. You go to bed thinking, I remember burning dinner a few times and thinking you're a bad cook, and then the girls have got to have this for the rest of their life. And then, you sort of wake up the next day and try and go back and make tomorrow better than it was yesterday. So, it's been it was a tough time. I now look at life in a different aspect now that, life's as I said, we're building. I'm building a new house at the moment, so it's a new stage going forward. I started, seeing a partner, and the girls are good with that. So life is good and again, it'll good and hopefully it'll be great again going forward. But it was certainly a hard period of my life and challenging period. And what the team sport taught me and what football taught me is sort of how I portrayed my life. So it was not that I had useful lessons for it, but I think I'd learned how to be resilient in some regards, but never have been thrown a challenge as big as that.
Go Team Kimmorley.
Yeah.
And Christian, I'd like to kind of resonate on some of those themes with you. I mean, I know outside of footy, activities like Camp Quality, for example, are actually a massive part of who you are and what's important to you. Why that organisation, and tell us a little bit about your role with them.
Yeah, I just want to say, Brett, mate, that's inspiring. I think, like the resilience you've shown, with your 4 daughters, and to lead for them and be strong for them. It's pretty incredible. They must be so lucky to have you as their dad. And I suppose I've worked a bit with Camp Quality, and over the years been a bit through with a few knee injuries, ACLs, and so I suppose I was going to see my surgeon in Melbourne with my first ACL. We just lost the 2016 grand final. 2017, we're on top of the ladder and feeling really good about kind of, making up for last year. And then I did my knee in Wollongong, and turned out to be the year that the boys won the premiership. So that was pretty tough. But I was kicking stones and a bit down the dumps, went to the hospital, and I was on my crutches and seeing the surgeon. And then, I was seeing people getting wheeled around and, battling cancer or permanent disabilities or life-changing injuries. And it kind of gave me a lot of perspective on, my issues and stuff that I've been through in my life. And I kind of thought, a bit of a dud knee that I'll recover and return to full health. And, I'm in a privileged position where we're professional footballers, and my job was to just rehab my knee. I didn't have to work on the tools or worry about providing for kids or anything like that. So, I reached out to a few charities, and Camp Quality were amazing and said, we'd love to get you involved. And I've been working with them for a few years now in fundraising, but also going on the camps. They're a charity that work for, kids 0 to 13 and the families affected by a cancer diagnosis. And they're just amazing people at that charity and the families you come across. But I think my point, I went to the volunteer training in Melbourne, and the people were telling me, your first camp you go on is, you're doing it for the kids, and then every other camp you're doing it for yourself. And I completely understand where they're coming from. You get so much out of helping people and using your profile for good and raising much needed funds. It's pretty simple. You feel really good about yourself, and I love doing that kind of work and continuing on, hopefully this year onwards.
Noddy, while we're on the subject, mate, let's do a sound out to the brain cancer organisations that you're involved with.
Yeah, that's obviously knowing Mark Hughes, and it was a gentleman that was successful enough in his own challenges with brain cancer for himself. He celebrates and rides a lot of the Mark Hughes Foundation. So obviously every year in our game, we're big supporters of the beanies for brain cancer round. I'm not too sure where it'll pop up in 2020 with what's going on this year with the virus that we've had floating around. But so that was a big supporter of myself there a few years ago. I think it was the first game of football that we'd sort of gone back to as a family was literally one of the games celebrating the beanies for brain cancer. And obviously it was at, PointsBet Park, or Shark Park as they call it traditionally, where we'd spent so much time as a family, So I think, the game does so many good things. I know it can get criticised for sometimes the players playing up or stupid things happening, but there's so much good comes out of the game. And as Christian just said, the things that we can do with our profiles, I think everyone becomes a role model in a way. But you appreciate things a lot more, as I said, like Christian obviously had the knee injuries, and then he's changed his focus or his mind attention to, hang on, it's not about me too much anymore. It's about what I can help or appreciating that I get to play football. And, you know, that's what my sort of life went through a few years ago. You know, you sort of think about, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, we can't do this. Where now all those little things you don't really care about, you don't stress about them, you don't worry about them, you appreciate things so much more, and you just try and make today as good as you can because you're not too sure. Not that you have an illness, but you just don't know when a bad corner is going to come around. So I just enjoy trying to live life fuller now, make the most of it, make sure today's a good day, and get the most out of it, I suppose. I can't sit still very much anymore. I like to stay extremely busy and active, and I think that's just a matter of trying to get as many things into your life as you can. So, you know, I remember talking about Camp Quality there. I remember meeting Simon Roundtree. He was the CEO of Camp Quality when I was at Canterbury, and we obviously had Camp Quality. It was on the front of our jersey for the whole year there when I first joined Canterbury. So, and I remember meeting him, and he was the most positive man I've ever met. Like, you know, he's a man that goes to hospitals every day and deals with kids' cancers and the horrible stories he would hear. He actually tried to get us to become the first club in the NRL to be positive on decisions. I suppose we have sports psychologists now in the game, which is 11 years beyond when our first decision happened. Was when a ref gives the decision, everyone blows up and they back chat, they whinge about it. If you drop the ball, you do something else. We were trying to become the first positive rugby league team in the game, that if a decision made, you'd go, yeah, sweet, no speaking back. So then all of a sudden it was sort of controlling your own destiny and not letting the negatives weigh you down. So it taught me a few lessons. We never did it, unfortunately, there at the time at Canterbury, but I think things happen for a reason. And then throughout my life, I've always had those little bits and pieces of knowledge or resilience or bits and pieces that you didn't think were there as a player. You just think they're motivating. But now you put them at when you get a bit older and a bit wiser, and not wiser, but you understand a bit more, they then become resilient lessons or knowledge that you can put in your bank and use for the good.
Well, actually, Noddy, I took the liberty of bringing my Mark Hughes Foundation beanie with me. Lucky enough to meet the great man at a Titans game last year. I got to interview him for the crowd, and mate, let me tell you, he was an inspiring gentleman who just had us all in the palm of his hands. So yeah, the great man Mark Hughes can make a nice beanie. So yeah, great cause as well. So
good stuff. You mentioned Christian before, Suliasi, Vunivalu, Felici Fusi. I've just been reading about the launch of Olsen Filipaina's book, and he played for Balmain back in the early 80s. An incredible statistic came up for me. And back then, there were 3 players of Pacific Island origins and heritage playing in the NRL, or what it was called back then. It's just extraordinary. They dominate this incredible sport these days. Their athleticism, where would we be without a highlights reel nod to talk about every week on these guys? You just have to admire someone like Olsen, because some of the stuff he copped on field, off field as well, was pretty raw. And I recommend everybody to go out and get the book and look it up. But we've come a long way, haven't we?
We have, yes, Simon, you're right. We love watching the Polynesians, the expansion of our game. I think, I don't know the numbers, I think it is pretty close to about 40 or 50% or even higher of our current players. You're going a long way. I watched Olsen Filipaina play for North Sydney against Lakes United, my club I grew up with, when I was about 12 years of age. And it was packed. There was when Lakes United played North Sydney, Olsen Filipaina, the goal kick in 5'8", was the star of the night. He was amazing. So, you go forward now. And I played with a guy called Kevin Iro. Kevin Iro had spent most of his career in England, so he came over and played the World Cup. He played Hunter Mariners for us in '97. He was the god when we went to England. We go to England with Kevin Iro, who'd won World Challenge Cups and plate finals and everything over there for most of his career, but no one in Australia sort of knew who Kevin Iro was. He was a beast. He was god in England. So to see some of those players, and now, as you said, we had I was lucky enough to play with Tawera Nikau as well, the start of our campaign in Melbourne. And he does some amazing things back home in New Zealand now with leadership. And, talk about a guy that made a pretty tough decision. I think he made the decision to cut off the bottom half of his leg so he could go home from hospital to spend time with his children, as a single parent as well. So he was our leader at the time from the Melbourne Storm. But you're right, Simon, that from where the game was then to where it is now, with the influx of Polynesians, all different cultures, and the expansion, and I suppose the Melbourne Storm would carry all of that there, Christian.
Yeah, it's funny actually you bring that up. I've tried pushing this nickname for a while, the White Rhino, calling myself that. The white front rower is an endangered species. We got these bloody Tongans and Samoans and Fijians. They're incredible athletes. I see it firsthand at the Storm. We've got Jesse Bromwich and Nelson Sopa-Solomona. We've got Tui Kamakamitha. These guys in the gym are just throwing things around that I could only dream of lifting. So, I'm still trying to wave the Caucasian flag, and there's not many of us left. But mate, it's just brilliant, and to see the difference that these guys can make back at home. I know Tui Kamakamitha's from a very small remote island in Fiji. Takes about 10 hours boat ride from Suva to get there. So his story is amazing, and what he's been able to give back to his community, and obviously the salary he's on in the NRL has been so beneficial for his people. Marika Korobidi, similar guy, came to the Storm, and obviously he's doing great things. These guys, if you ever need a lesson on looking after your family and your people and your culture, the Pacific Islanders do it great. And it's great to see so many cultures in our game celebrated, and I think that's the best thing about our game. We welcome everyone, from all kinds of places, and there's always a spot for them. So, it's a good thing about rugby league.
I'd love to turn our attention now to the state of origin concept. I think, Brett, it's 20 years this year since you made your debut in that clean sweep over Queensland. You kept Joey Johns on the bench, I think, because you had his position. Looking back across your career, as some of those origin moments, you talked about the heartache, and I wasn't going to mention the Matt Bowen pass, but there were so many other great moments. Surely you must have some fond memories of that era.
Oh, my whole career was great memories. I was a kid that grew up in Newcastle, and I was 12 years of age I'd grown up with my dad playing football in Newcastle, but I was a South Sydney fan because there was no Newcastle Knights. So, when I was 12 years of age, to have the Newcastle Knights, your own team in your own community, to go and sit on the hill and support them, that was the start of sort of my dream. I had this rugby league team playing in my own backyard. So I was instantly become a Knights fan. And then, I played, probably about a 12, 13-year career. And I was just a competitive little bloke that tried hard every week and played a flat style football that was sort of taught a bit at the Melbourne Storm there, and had a lot of luck. I certainly don't say I didn't have any luck through my career, and it was all good. Even the bad times probably made me a better player from the resilience of making the mistakes in a way, or the challenges. So that Origin series in 2000 was, as you said, my debut game going to Suncorp Stadium. It was the last time I think the bus went down the old Caxton Street with the full cans of beer being hurled at you. So I had Brad Fittler as my captain. Wayne Pearce was the coach. He was a legend of the game, and he's done so much for the current game now with the Apollo team. But he was our coach. Andrew Johns, as you said, was on the bench. Jeff Tuga was a hooker. I got on extremely well. The bloke called Tim Brasher, he was our fullback on that team. And I remember jumping on the bus. We stayed at the Roma Street in Brisbane, jumped on the bus, and they said, "Oh, everyone sit on the left-hand side of the bus." And I was like, "Why?" But, as a kid, you just do it anyway. But so all the players were sitting on the left-hand side of the bus. You do a police escort. You get to the top of Caxton Street. You get down halfway down Caxton Street, and obviously it's a lot nicer Caxton Hotel now than what it was 20 years ago. All of a sudden, the people come and stand on the road, and the bus has to stop. And all of a sudden, you start hearing this massive smashing noise, and it's full being thrown at the bus. from out the back of the Caxton Hotel. They just hands at you and hurl abuse at you. And I got nervous enough on my debut as it is. And then and then there must have been a bucket of beer that they were like, that's what we're willing to waste on the Blues, and that's all we're going to waste. Because it was literally like as soon as the last beer hit the bus, the people then hop off the road, and the bus can then continue to keep driving down the road. So I get to the stadium and I'm absolutely shitting myself, and all of a sudden Brad Fittler stands up and goes, "Right, boys, how good's this going to be?" and then you're right, like that was the 3-0 clean sweep, and I think the first game was relatively close and we just won, and then the second game we'd obviously sealed the series, and the third game was just like a fun week because the result was out of the way. We celebrated, we mucked around, and then I think we absolutely blew him off the park, and Ryan Girdler scored, which to today I think is still a record for the most points in an Origin match. So it started well. I think I played 10 Origins. That was 3 wins. I might have finished with 6 losses after that, and maybe one more win at the end. So, yeah, it was a tough campaign. I always felt that Origin was probably the only thing in my whole career that I never felt like I was not comfortable at, but you can't walk off and think I played really good today. Always felt Clubland, I had a handle on Clubland, and I had a handle sometimes on playing for Australia and other rep games, but I always felt like Origin was a different beast, and one that I never sort of really got a full grasp of how to play it and how to manage and own it, really.
Those Caxton Hotel memories, I'd be having trouble sleeping every night after that. See, Christian, you young blokes know nothing, mate, compared to what these blokes went through. Okay, so now I'm projecting forward. Christian, your knees held up really well this year. The Storm are on their way to the premiership, or have won the premiership, and 3 State of Origins. The White Rhino scores in the corner in Game 3 after it's 1-1. How does that sound?
Hey, that sounds pretty bloody good to me. Yeah, and as for me, Origin is it's a really different beast. It's a really emotional game and an emotional preparation. Being at the Storm, it's very analytical, very heavily reviewed. And I spoke to Belsby about this around the time of my debut, and he kind of had a few regrets because he never played Origin. He thought he kind of maybe overcoached and didn't really connect emotionally enough in his time as New South Wales coach. And I could really understand that because, Kevy is so emotional. Every meeting, he's almost in tears talking about, how proud he is of Queensland and the state and what it represents. So it was really refreshing, the preparation and the weeks of that Game 3, but also being involved as 18th man. It's a really different beast. It's a really special thing we've got.
So the other thing, Simon and Jonathan, obviously, there's no club football, even grand final week. You're only in 5 days. You're in preparation. State of Origin goes for 10 days. Media starts 10 days out from the game. From when you're in camp, you get media's at training. Media want every time you're free. Then you don't want to let your state down. Then as a kid, what are you watching on Wednesday night when Origin's on TV? You watch it because about 5 other million people watch it as well. Then you get a little taste of it. It doesn't have a normal style. Also, I don't know, Christian, you believe this, it doesn't have the normal style or fluency of what club football does. It's tackle 1 to tackle 8 to the 80th minute is fast, no structure. You feel like you're on top, and then you're chasing your ass back down the other end of the field, and then you defend your line for 5 sets because you don't want to concede a try. And it just changes so much what Origin football is about in camp-wise, as you said, because I think you play the game 5 times before you get to the game. Then the pace of the game is just, I always felt it was insane as well.
Christian, you were a young lad growing up in places like Townsville and Gladstone before you came to Brisbane to finish your schooling. You would have got a sense through those years of what it meant to Queenslanders, as I know it means to New South Wales. So did you feel like you were kind of inheriting a tradition and part of a legacy that had gone on before?
Yeah, as Noddy was saying earlier, the Wednesday nights, you bunker down, get your maroon gear on, Roy HD, tuck them on, listen, and it was just a highlight. It just so invested and emotionally. It's a really amazing thing. And you look at it compared to all other sporting leagues in the world, right? What other sport would, midway through their entire professional season of clubland, would they go, yeah, righto, you can have all the best players in our competition, full contact sport, you can have them on a Wednesday night, we'll take them back, play on Friday, and we'll deal with, the injuries and whatever we get, even though we're paying them for 12 months. It's a bizarre thing. I went to America for a bit of rehab and caught up with an executive who worked at the LA Chargers, and she just couldn't understand it. And it is bizarre when you think about how we've set it up and how Origin is intertwined with the NRL. It's an amazing, special thing that we've got, and it's pretty special.
Certainly, let's hope that by November that crowds will be back as well. That would be a wonderful thing, I think, look, for all sport across Australia and around the world as well. So let's talk about this season. We've got some rule changes. Christian, what do you think, mate? Or is that one of those side issues that maybe the media kind of ends up focusing on? One ref, 6 again. Interchange is going to be less this year as well. Do we get a bit tangled up in that stuff and you guys have it's just a game to play?
I think I hinted at it earlier about we've got a 2-week window where it's clear water, basically. There's no sport on in the world, other than the Belarusian soccer who just played through. But, we've got such a great opportunity to showcase our great game and to bring in new fans and different countries and kind of sell our product. I believe, we're worried about the wrestle and worried about that. So what do? We take out the one ref who's, his own job is just to look at the ruck and the breakdown. So I personally would have preferred to have 2, but I think that's just a bit of the leadership we've got. Peter Blandies is, he's got an opinion and he goes for things. And, like getting us back on May 28th, we're ecstatic about being back, training and playing and being back. And I think you just need to, obviously there's other things that come with that, and that's something that he sees as important with our big stakeholders, the broadcasters, and making the game attractive. So I think you can't knock him for one thing and then be grateful for the other. I guess it's the complete package as our leadership.
So I'm excited about what one ref will do for our game. I think the players' approach is obviously, as Christian just said, we just got to get on with it and promote what we got for 2 weeks or 3 weeks ahead of every other coach. I think the players will go into the fact that they know there's going to be one referee. So interpret-wise, it tells you it's going to be a faster play the ball, more fatigue, more chance to play football, less sort of structure of the traditional 2 or 3 man tackles, 6, 7, 8 seconds slow play the ball if you've earned the right to. So I think if you go in with the mindset, they've had a limited off season now. I know they did an off season November, December, but we've all sort of been on breaks and they probably haven't trained to the same high quality that they would do when they're around their teammates. But they've got 2 or 3 weeks of quick prep, get ready for round 3 to start. So I think it's going to be much more open going forward with the one ref policy. And the 6 to go, I'm a fan of 6 to go because I think when we give a penalty away inside the 20 or near the try line, they take 12 seconds to make a decision because they've got to look at the coach anyway. 6 to go will just make the game flow on, and that's again going to cause more fatigue to come into the game, which means more football, more offloads, more open style of football. So I think the style of football in 2020 will be positive and will be something that we can look back and go, that's the blueprint going forward. And that's what I think they're looking at, reducing interchange next year. For when 2 refs do come back, let's reduce the interchange to still keep fatigue factor into the game.
So in the time we've got left, let's talk about after the siren and what it means. Christian, you've been diligently preparing from an outsider's perspective for what life looks like after football. You've got your degree, you're studying an MBA, you've been to Harvard for an intensive course there, you're visiting other organisations. Tell us about what your vision is for life after footy and maybe give us a sense of how well you think the cohort is for that moment.
Yeah, I think it probably relates to my journey as a footballer. At high school, I played rugby union. I tried to make it through there, didn't get signed, and finished school, went to uni first year out of school in Brisbane. And I suppose footy was never a guaranteed thing. It was more of a dream, to be honest. And I kind of just went about my life and went to uni. And I think, and so I carried that on when I got to the Storm. And I think young players don't understand, I suppose, the longevity of an NRL player. And I suppose how long you're going to be working for a great career. You get to 30 years old and you played NRL your whole time. That's a great run. That's a superb effort. And, you know, retirement age is pushing up towards 70 now. So I think it's always just been something that I've thought, you know, I want to work in sport and commercial side of sport after. And I feel like it helps me play better and prepare better as a professional, because it's such a stressful analytical environment at the Storm. You know, we review our performances day in, day out. And then obviously you've got the outside noise, media, commentary and yada, yada. So it's really nice to have something to go off to that you're passionate about, that doesn't relate to footy and doesn't worry about anything like that. And there's a really good group at the Storm. We've got a bunch of guys doing carpentry apprenticeships. And then some of our top earners, Jesse Bromwich, Will Chambers. You know, these guys are on really good salaries, but they still see a need to prepare for life after footy. And I think it's had a really good flow-on effect for a whole squad. I think a lot of guys are really conscious of that. And I think for me, for mental health, especially like post-retirement, I think if you've got something you're interested in and a bit of purpose and you've been reasonably smart with your money and you can pursue something that gives you purpose. And I suppose, you know, nothing's going to give you the same high as rugby league, but, you know, finding stuff like that, so if you don't just fall off a cliff after you retire, I think that's a big thing for me.
No, there are some sad stories of guys I'm sure you played with and before as well. You know, when the money wasn't there, you know, they were coming in you know, as carpenters or builders or brickies labourers or whatever, playing sport and maybe copping an ACL or something and or whacked in the head too many times, you know, long before we had concussion tests and HIAs and everything. There are some really sad stories in AFL, NRL, all contact sports, but it has, we were talking before about how it's changed in terms of the awareness of racism on and off the field and everything, and what Christian has just laid out so nicely for us now. It must give you a really good satisfaction, good feeling to see what has transpired in this sport over the couple of decades that you've been around it.
Yeah, you're right, Simon. And I think it's every sport. I think we all wanted to get to the age of earning lots of money through TV deals, and everyone, codes all got bigger and grew so quick that no one ever knew what professionalism was or what building a proper franchise or business model looked like. So I interviewed Doc Raftery, who was a doctor for the Dragons when, you know, he was a player obviously for the Sharks and then become a doctor. He's actually the World Cup Rugby Union doctor. And actually rugby was the first code to bring in the HIA assessment more than rugby league. But if you think about what it's done for rugby league in its short time, you know, I remember several occasions where you're playing football and you literally would wake up not too sure where you were. The old, you know, magic water would come out, you'd put it across your head and you thought you just were meant to play on, you know. So that was what happened in the game. So and now you see the safety for the players, the long-term effect that we know it does have now, and then you add that to professionalism of recovery, preparation. Most clubs now would have 2 or 3 welfare officers that are on the outside of the football stuff. You've obviously got a head coach that wants you to win and become better. You've then got trainers that train you to turn your body into an athlete. You've got assistant coaches that make your defence or your attack better. You'd have a dietitian that makes you eat better and train better. And then you've got these welfare managers now, plus obviously, hopefully your own player manager that would sit there and go, where's your life want to live? Where do you want to work in after football? What's your hobbies? What's your interest? And it's literally now becoming managing a player and making him a better person. Then he makes him a better footy player. And then hopefully when the clubs hand him over to the real world, as Christian said, whether it's 30 or 35 or 40 at some stage, then hopefully we can adapt to it, because obviously the TV deals now is about 9 or 10 million is the salary cap. You know, depends on what era you played at. I was a era like Super League, so our salary cap into the Super League war players, I think it was about 7 or 8 million, and then I think I played in the salary cap. My last year I played, my salary cap was something like 3.5 million. So that's a lot less than what the 10 million is now. Still shared over obviously the same amount of players. So it depends on what era you've come out of it. Hopefully now the current players can set themselves up extremely well financially because of the pay TV deal and hopefully the professionalism in the clubs. But you're right, Simon. It's when we go to the real world and if you finish playing football when you're 35, you've still got, as Christian said, you maybe got 35 years of working before you actually do retire to put your feet up properly. So I've seen a lot of bad things come out of the game. I've seen a lot of players who literally, they lose that routine of when training is, being told what to do and where to be, and they lose the ability of having monthly pay come into the bank. And that's, I think, is a big thing that really affects the players when they first stop playing. The mateship's a big thing as well. You hang around your 30 best mates every day. You have a giggle, you have a laugh, you train. And as Christian said, I don't think anywhere in life can you get to a high of what scoring a try to win a game at full time feels like. So you don't get the high of highs, but obviously then you probably don't get the low of lows as well when you feel bad. So you sort of become a lot more plateaued. So it's a massive challenging act, I think, to find that place that to be ready for retirement from playing sport when retirement happens for you.
So in the time we've got left, Christian, one last one for you. What are the goals and aspirations for 2020 and beyond?
Yes, I want to obviously showcase that I'm back and I'm full health, and I think I'm physically in probably the best condition I've been in, but obviously I haven't played an NRL game yet, so I'll be working hard to get back and hopefully get picked for that Canberra game. So it's a big year for me as a footballer, and hopefully can see some opportunities come up, stay healthy, and maybe jag an Origin game at the end. That's certainly what I'm looking at, and continue with my MBA and still do my charity work and stuff like that. And I suppose be a good year as a footballer, but also be a good year as a person and to those people close to me. That's what I'll be focusing on.
So 2020, the year of the white rhino.
Yeah, up the rhino. Let's push that hard, eh?
Nod, what about you? What does 2020 look like? Is it going to be the usual suspects towards next summer who are in the finals, or is there maybe a wild card or two on the deck?
I actually think the Canberra Raiders might be an opportunity to win 2020 after the setback they had in 2019. Really good roster. Obviously, the Melbourne Storm was such a well-coached side and high standards that they'll be there and thereabouts. And Parramatta could be the other team that there are a chance of, I think it's been 40-odd years. I think 82, 86, it might have been the last time they won a grand final. So just a little bit before my debut, but not much. But, so I think they'll be the three sides that'll be knocking on the door. So hopefully, Simon, as you said, Peter V'landys has done an amazing job to get live sport of rugby league back. Parts of my role in media will return, and we'll see what happens last weekend in October, who gets to hold up this very, very proud trophy for 2020. It'll be a one that I think we'll all remember because it's such a different year. It'll be interesting to see who wins this one.
And Simon, the Proven Summons Trophy has an extra poignancy this year, doesn't it?
Indeed it does, mate. In fact, I worked for a long time with Arthur's son, David. We're all very saddened, I think. He represented what the true spirit of rugby league is all about, and that that legacy will go on forever. And I think if we can get tangled up in side issues, as both Christian and Noddy have said, that there is something wonderful about this sport and its origins and where it came from, and that working man's kind of ethic as well. Despite all the money that's around these days, it's still very much that's something that underpins it all. And I think all the fans, and that ultimately Christian knows that he's obviously been very well raised by mum and dad, and he knows those people who pay their $50, $60, $100 if they want a good seat. That's what sport's all about these days, and that's what it should be about.
Well, sadly, I could chat to these two fine NRL stalwarts, and you, Simon, of course, for ages, but we're at time. Christian, you made all the luck in the world. The resilience you've shown, the courage and the qualities you've shown are tribute, yes, to you and your family and to the game. Noddy, you're an absolute inspiration, and we thank you for your time. Simon, mate, you're probably some of those things, I'm sure, but it's always delightful.
None of those things. I'm none of those things.
We are out of time, unfortunately. That has been Mad Men Podcast for today. Once again, Christian, Brett, an absolute privilege, and we wish you all luck on your future endeavours. But for now, goodbye to all. Thanks for joining.
Go the White Rhino.
Yeah.
Hey, boys, you blokes in the media, come on, let's get it going. Let's start pushing.
Yeah,
Contract here, Colby. Contract here, come on.